WELSTech is a bi-weekly podcast exploring the intersections of technology and ministry. It is part of the podcast network sponsored by WELS, the Wisconsin Evangelical Lutheran Synod. Our show today is hosted by Martin Spriggs and Sally Draper. Welcome back to WELSTech, everybody. This is episode 712. That's 712, and we're recording on November 10th, 2023. My name is Martin Spriggs, and this is a show about technology and ministry and where those two intersect. Joining me as usual, Sally Draper. Hello, Sally Draper. How are you?
I'm very good, Martin. As you said, November 10th, I realized it's probably not very often in 712 shows that we've recorded on a Friday, but today is Friday, in fact. And so it would be cool if we had like baseball stats about WELSTech, don't you think? Like, you know, how many were with video or just audio only, or how many were on Friday
minutes,
or whatever.
Yes.
I do a lot of work these days with a Microsoft tool called Power BI. It would be super cool if I could have all kinds of visualizations in Power BI about it.
How many guests? How many repeat guests? Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. I like that. How much listener feedback
stats.
We've got. Right. That'd be pretty
Don't you
cool.
Love stats? Aren't they interesting?
Well, when you live long enough, when you do something long enough, stats are kind of fun, right?
Yeah.
You can do some real analysis.
We've lived a long time, Martin.
Yeah. So I am excited about this show today because we're talking about a topic that is super relevant in our churches today, and that's the use of visuals in the worship experience. And usually that is represented by some kind of screen, whether that's an LCD screen broadcast or transmitted by a projector, or an LCD screen, plastered on the wall, whatever it is. It's not so much the technology, but it's what's on that screen and its usefulness for those people looking at it. So neither you nor I spend a lot of time in that space, but we have people that we know that do. So.
We have our connections, huh?
Right.
The mic, that was probably really lovely to hear. Yeah, excited to have Carissa Nelson joining us today. We're going to play an interview in just a moment with Carissa where she talks all about screen design, and that's from an artist perspective and someone who's done it for quite a while and does an amazing job at it, and also contributes to a product that probably many of our listeners are using if they're using screens or any of the worship resources that are being produced these days in our congregational services area. So excited to have her join us. But before we dive into that, maybe we should just kind of preface it that there are tools that WELS provides to assist with screen setup and content and design, that kind of thing. The first of which is a tool that came out in conjunction with Christian Worship 2021, the new hymnal that isn't so new anymore. We can actually call it our hymnal, the blue hymnal. And that's a tool called Service Builder. Martin, you're pretty familiar with Service Builder.
Yeah, Service Builder is a product that has existed for quite some time. It was created by our friends at Concordia Technology Services, and we worked with them to kind of what we call white label their product, a WELS version. And I was on the committee that worked through that and actually did some of the kind of the pointing and clicking to get the content into the system. So sometimes if you're in there, you will probably see some things that I cut and pasted and massaged to make sure that the verse lined up with the notes, those kinds of things. It's actually a very cool system, and I know a lot of congregations use it. I heard the other day it's about 3/4 of our congregation now subscribe to it and use it for worship planning, the content side. But as we're most interested today, the creation of the slide materials or the content for the slides that can get then prettied up and presented.
Yeah, exactly. If you're in the tool, you can just click on a handy button for the Sunday you want to plan. And there you can add your hymn selections and psalm selections, the order of service, things like that. And when you're all ready, there's a link in the upper right area that says prepare the bulletin, prepare a presentation, prepare playlist. So Carissa will probably talk a little in the interview about the prepare presentation option, where you can have your service setting, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 4, whatever you're using. And all of a sudden you have some real generic starter presentation slides that have all of the interactive resources for that service setting, the confession and absolution, the prayers, all that kind of stuff that goes along with that particular day of the church year. So once you have the guts of your presentation planned, you can export it and bring it into either Google Slides or PowerPoint and work with it that way. So you don't have to, start from scratch every time with the pieces of the worship planning that you need to work with. So pretty handy tool. There's actually a video tutorial that goes deep into that was produced by NPH. So check out our show notes page for that video tutorial if you aren't using that presentation planning tool.
Yeah, and we had a nice walkthrough on the show, I don't know, a couple of years back from Caleb Bassett. So that'd be a good one to watch as well. He really kind of talked through the ins and outs and in layman's terms, how is this going to fit or could it fit in your worship planning workflows?
And that other piece of worship planning, the foundation series is out there with different sermon series, podcasts to support them, where they're talking the pastor language as they prepare their sermon preparation, their text studies and things like that. And then a whole slew of imagery and things. And some of it is very acceptable for social media, but much of it is also designed for slides and designed to use in worship. So you carry those images through maybe on your worship folder, your social media, your e-news to your congregation, whatever it may be. And then you can also, make use of, and I'm not sure if this will show or not, but that same imagery on your, as your design, kind of your master slides and things like that. So that once you have that content from Service Builder, it's really easy to apply design to it.
Mm-hmm. So great resources, and the person behind the scenes for some of those resources, Carissa Nelson, as we mentioned, she was good enough to sit down with us for a little bit the other day and talk with us about not only her work for those projects, but also just in general, some considerations when you're putting together worship slides or other kinds of slides for worship purposes. So let's have a listen to that interview with Carissa.
Joining us today on WELSTech is Carissa Nelson. Carissa is a digital artist and just happens to be the wife of my pastor here at St. Paul's in North Mankato. So happy to have you joining us, Carissa. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here today.
And longtime WELSTech listeners will remember that Carissa's been on before. It was way back in 2013. That was quite a while ago, 10 years ago, on WELSTech 282. Maybe a little bit's changed about Carissa since then. So why don't you reintroduce yourself to our listeners?
She was probably in grade school at that point.
Yes, I was. At that time, I was just starting out in using art for church purposes, I guess. It was kind of my introduction to that world then. So it's been about 10 years that I've been doing this now. At that time, we were just lay members living in the Milwaukee area. And now I'm married to a pastor, same family, just different location and not lay members anymore. But yeah, we went to Colorado for Vicary year since then, and also lived in Iowa and served a congregation there. And now our kids are all teenagers. We have 3 teenagers, live in Mankato, Minnesota, go to church with Sally. And I'm still working with churches on worship art and logos, illustration, getting more into incorporating illustrations into video, which is really fun. So some things are the same. I'm still working with art for church and new location.
Good, good. Well, we'd love to pick your brain about a whole variety of things, Carissa. And I actually kind of regularly do, but that's just because you're so close. That's wonderful. But today we wanted to kind of focus in on worship screen design. So get your thinking cap on that topic, and maybe start out with what is the goal of a worship presentation, or maybe what shouldn't the goal be if you're using screens in worship?
Right. So if you're using a screen in worship, especially if you have the whole service up on the screen, I think it's important to remember that that's a tool there for worship to help make the service more intuitive, probably easier for guests to follow along, or parents with kids have their arms full and can't necessarily juggle all of the physical materials. And so the screen should be there to help guide people through the service and enhance the message for the day, help build the narrative, but it isn't necessarily supposed to capture everyone's attention all of the time. That can be challenging because screens really demand a lot of attention. So if you're intentional about what you're doing, it can help guide people through worship without pulling them away from God's word and the message for the day. So I think that it's important to keep in mind that it should be there to function and help, and maybe you can aim for understated and just a clear narrative.
Carissa, yeah, Marcia McLuhan was fond of saying the screen always wins, which is kind of just what you said. What's the difference? And you probably started in print material, or do a lot print material as well. What's the difference when somebody's designing for print versus, the big screen? When you're thinking about designing, what kind of differences do you see?
That's a good question. I mostly work with digital stuff now. Okay. I guess the first thing I think of is resolution is very different on screen versus print. So if you are looking for images online and just grabbing stuff off of there, it's going to be at a lot smaller resolution than if you're going to print something. So that's one big difference. Color can be different. Oftentimes on screen, it's RGB color, and print is often CMYK. So you need to be aware of those differences if you're designing. But a lot of times these days, it needs to work for both. If you're at a worship service, it's really great if the printed worship folder and the screen work together. So keeping in mind those size and color differences, you do need different types of files for the different ways that you use it. So designs for worship or branding need to be thought of not as just one thing. It is really a whole package of resources usually now that needs to work in a variety of scenarios.
What about typography and those kinds of things as you're thinking about size of text, the font itself?
Yes, I really love boring fonts because fonts can have really big personalities, and what you really need the font to be doing if you're doing a worship presentation is people need to be able to read it quickly and keep going and not get distracted by what kind of message the font has. Some of them are very playful, or they're very childlike, or they can just really pull attention away from people just quickly reading through the material. So just a good sans serif font is nice. It's important to have a simple background so that you can have good contrast between the text and the background. Not too busy. I also really like fonts that have a lot of weight differences to them, a lot of variation, so that you can have, maybe there's a thin version for when the congregation is speaking and then a clear difference well, probably thin for pastor and really bold for when the congregation is speaking. So
Mm-hmm.
something that's just really easy to see the difference and keep going intuitively.
You mentioned contrast. Black on white or white text on black? Do you have a preference or suggestion, or other colors?
I really like a dark background
Okay.
personally because it helps the screen disappear. But I mix it up so that it's not the same all the time. I've also heard that kind of a gray background with black text can be easier for some people visually. So I do both. It's most challenging if you choose something that's kind of in the middle zone for a background, and you have a hard time knowing if you choose a dark font or a light color for the text. That can be the most problematic. Straight up white can be a little bit bright. So sometimes a light gray or a cream color is kind of nice for a background too.
Yeah.
So I do both.
Great advice. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So if somebody were not doing screens currently in worship and just considering getting started, do you have any tips for just getting started?
Sure. I think that first of all, it's okay if you don't use a screen. I think there's a lot of good reasons to not. You can do a lot to communicate a theme, even for a series, through your worship folder or signs that you might have as people come in. So that's okay. And if you're just easing into it, one thing I've seen churches do is have a digital hymn board when at first it just lists the hymns, and then maybe you can move up from there. Um, the simpler you keep it, the easier it is to engage more people in the process. If you make a really complicated presentation right off the bat, it's difficult to engage more people in that process because it seems really labor intensive and kind of intimidating to get involved with. So keeping that in mind as you're putting together your presentation, sometimes it seems like it might be better to have more because you can give people more information, but there's a point at which people can only process so much information, and there's only so much time that a volunteer or a staff person might have to put into the presentation. So just don't feel bad about keeping it simple. I think it's actually something to aspire to. So definitely ease into it slowly, think about how much time you can put into it, and then just be proud of yourself if you do something simple.
That's awesome. You just gave advice for the people that are doing it, currently as well. Now we have a goal to keep it simple and aspire to that. So very good. I'm familiar with Wells Service Builder. We've actually done shows on Service Builder and how it ties in with the hymnal that was released, I believe in 2021. And then also the Wells Congregational Services website has something called the Foundation. And I'm wondering how those things can tie in. I know you're familiar with the Foundation because some of your artwork is there. So,
yes. I recently, over the summer, took time to learn Service Builder so that we could have a more streamlined process for all of us at our church. And I thought the most helpful thing to know about Service Builder is that it is not trying to be PowerPoint. So if you expect it to be, you're going to be disappointed. What it's really awesome for is populating the slides with all of the text that you need. And then you can export it to finish in Google Slides or in PowerPoint or whatever your choice is for that program. But we found it was really helpful to choose, like if you're using the Foundation or another theme to just choose one background to put into Service Builder, because you just get one background in there. So choose a really simple one that you use on most of the slides. If it's completely blank, that's fine. Or in the Foundation, you'll find there's usually a slide that has a real small logo in the corner. So you could choose that. And then after you've exported it from Service Builder, you can do the fine tuning where the page breaks are, kind of adjust some of the justification on some of the slides. Sometimes they come out a little bit different than you might prefer. So just some editing. And then it's easy to paste in the title slides for your series or your theme for the day after you get it out of Service Builder. So we found that was helpful. And if you have one template for a whole series, that's really helpful. So you can kind of quickly generate several worship services at a time, and then just paste your title slides into all of them and quickly edit them. So we found we could kind of add two basic templates in Service Builder, one with a dark background and one with a light background, that we could duplicate for a new series, and then, name the template based on the series and apply that throughout the series. And then when there's a new series, make one new template.
Very good. Great tips. It sounds like a pretty streamlined process then to make the two coordinate together. Just want to share for a minute the foundation itself. We've talked about it before on WELSTech, but all parts of the church here are represented. And then as you drill into a particular part, that's where you're going to find, different graphics and sized 4x3 and 16x9. I have a couple of examples of ones that are coming up for the season of Advent and the season of Christmas for this year. And just happy to say thank you to Carissa for beautiful design work on these and on many other things you see in the foundation. There's lots of great stuff there. So continue to watch that and see the different series and supporting resources that are available there. In that realm, maybe you could tip our listeners, give us a little inside information. Is there anything exciting that you're working on in the foundation series coming up?
Sure. And I actually work with Brian Urbanek from Goldwing Productions on this quite a bit. And he was recently on your podcast too.
That's right.
Yep. We're a team that works on this. So he does a lot of the video production and managing the project. And then I make the design for the artwork. And I'm really excited about the artwork that's coming up in the new year. These Christmas ones are also really great, but I worked on those in summer. So I'm moving on now to like Lent and Easter. I have Easter done, and I'm pretty excited. The Easter series often has kind of an apologetics angle to it. So looking at the reality of the resurrection for Easter this year, I think that's going to be a pretty cool series. Lent is one called Rethinking Religion. So I think the title is very thought-provoking on its own. And then the week-to-week themes I think are very interesting. So I'm looking forward to that series. And then Epiphany has From the River to the Mountain. And I think just rivers and mountains that's imagery that people like in general. So the graphics for that, I've found people like quite a bit that were involved in the process for that. So I'm looking forward to all of the new series in the new year.
Should be a good year. Very good. Well, we certainly thank you for taking a few minutes out of your schedule. I know it's a busy one, and talking with us and with our WELSTech listeners. And we look forward to following the work along. And maybe we'll have some feedback on screens and we can circle back and ask some more questions. We'll see how it goes.
That sounds great.
Thank you, Carissa.
Thanks so much. You're a blessing to the Synod. Appreciate your work, and it's having an impact. So this is awesome. Thanks for taking the time with us.
Thank you.
Our thanks to Carissa Nelson for taking some time out of a busy mom's schedule. And boy, what a blessing she is to the Synod.
For sure. And
church,
if you'd like,
right?
definitely to my church, for sure. If you'd like more information about Carissa's work or to discuss, any questions you might have around the things she said in the interview or whatever, you can find her at carissanelsonart.com. And she's got her digital portfolio there and also her contact information. So check it out.
Excellent. Thanks again, Carissa, for that. So if you have other tools or techniques or suggestions for this kind of thing, screen design or the use of Service Builder in worship, those kinds of things, resources that you found to be useful, let us know. Go to our show notes page, welstech.wels.net. And leave a note there or send us an email, welstech@wels.net. We'd love to hear some feedback on that. And there's more than one way to do it. And I think there's a lot of different approaches, and we'd love to hear about them. So Sally, should we move on to ministry resources?
We should. I'm going to turn the mic over to you because you found some great resources around churches and artificial intelligence.
Yeah, Church Tech Today is a great resource. I read them regularly. And lately, as you can imagine, there's been a lot of content around AI, and very appropriate because we get a lot of questions on that. And I'm sure maybe you have questions in your own congregation and school about this suitableness. Is that a word? Suitability of AI for use in ministry applications. And that's a valid question. These couple articles that we'll put in the show notes talk about that a little bit. One of them is I like for right out of the chute for AI usage within a ministry setting, and that's how a pastor can use AI after a sermon has been created, not creating the sermon with it, but repurposing the content of a sermon. And they talk about using AI to maybe feed ideas about social media posts or FAQs, small group discussion guides, devotional content, articles for a church blog, video scripts, ebooks, prayer guides, all those things, kind of getting more mileage out of the hard work that you put into a sermon for other applications and how AI can potentially help you in that process. So I thought that was a well-done article. It kind of opened my eyes to some other uses for it, and good stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Friend or foe, it's here to stay, and
yes.
Certainly making use of it in wise ways to alleviate some of your workload. You've done great work on that sermon, but maybe just allowing it to kind of pick up the ball and run from there with some other content repurposing. That's a great idea.
I don't want to tip my hat too much, but my pick in a future episode will be a podcasting tool that not only will allow you to transcribe it and kind of pick some highlights of it and then bring it into your note-taking system, but it will also apply AI and summarize it for you. So here's audio content that you're applying AI to, and it's giving you a bulleted list of the highlights of a podcast. That's pretty cool. So
that podcast,
I'm not going to tell you what it is, but that'll be a future one. So yeah, it could.
I'll be waiting on that one.
All right, Sally, time for picks of the week.
And Martin, it's getting towards the end of the year. The last time we met to plan for WELSTech, we actually discussed an end of year episode. For those that listen, you might be familiar that in the past, as years end, we look at the best things that we were excited about during the year. And I got to thinking, what is my favorite pick of the week? Picks of the week are always kind of challenging. You want to get something that's useful for people. And obviously something that's useful for you makes that really meaningful to you to share and everything. And for me, this was kind of a strange year where I adjusted to some medical challenges. And I would say the thing that shined the brightest throughout this year was my use of Alexa for home automation. I'm a little bit worried about saying that name because she's in the room listening to me. So hopefully she doesn't respond. Our
listeners who are playing this out loud, they're probably not as happy either.
I played a video this morning that was promoting it, and she did respond. She turned the lights on downstairs because it told her to. And I thought that was kind of funny. But
just call her the A-lady.
Yeah, I started slow with home automation, and I would say, wasn't really in need of anything in particular. But as years go by, the Black Friday sales and things like that have really affordable tools. So why not try it out? And now I'm up to I have 2 Echo Dots. I have an Echo Show. I have 1 smart plug, which I couldn't find them selling anymore, but it actually has a speaker built into it. So it's an Echo device, but it just plugs into the wall directly. And then I have some outdoor smart plugs as well. And then probably one of my favorite things is the switches that I have, where we've actually replaced the light switch with a Wi-Fi enabled device, basically, that listens to my friend with the the A name. So anyway, you don't have to go to Amazon, although their Black Friday deals are a really good way to get started with it, because usually they have some almost giveaway devices. But you can buy these kind of devices anywhere. You just look for the Works with Alexa kind of icon on it. Certainly my friend Menards, which is kind of our date night destination. I don't know about you and Debbie, but we're at Menards all the time.
We've done
Menards
a few
sells
Friday
plenty
night
of
things there. Yes.
yeah, plenty of, Wi-Fi enabled LED light bulbs and things of that nature, the switches and all that kind of stuff. So you can find these things all over the place. Some of the automations that are near and dear to my heart here at home are especially light bulbs, just turning on lights in various areas of the house. Martin, I look back at our picks of the week from the past because I was wondering if I picked any specific brands or anything. And I think you were the one last year who talked about Singlet light bulbs as being a pick.
Affordable.
I have some Singlet light bulbs.
Yep.
I have other brands as well. Like over time, you don't find the same things and
Right.
you buy what you pick up. You have kind of a mixture, but that's really okay. You just have to get them discovered in the app run by the lady with the A name. And then once they're discovered, you can control them. You can set up programming around them. For instance, I have some outdoor light bulbs that I have programmed to come on at sunset and go off at sunrise. And when the time changes, it knows that. And it just automatically does those kind of things for me. I have outdoor plugs that, I plug into an outdoor outlet. And that's for my Christmas lights, same kind of schedules and things where they just come on automatically and I don't have to worry about it. I use groups a lot. So big house, you go downstairs, it's really dark and cavernous. And I say, turn on the main floor lights and everything lights up. Just really easy. I don't have to be on the opposite end of the house, turning on all the lights one by one and things like that. At Christmas time, I have one that says turn on Christmas, and all my trees and indoor lighting and things that I have for Christmas come on with just turn on Christmas commands. I really enjoy the music features that come with Alexa. If you don't have Prime, there's some commercials in there, but it's not too bothersome. But if you have Prime, then it's commercial free and you can dial up whatever you want to listen to.
Pretty big
that's
catalog
really nice.
too. Yeah, it's been growing lately.
Yep. And here's a cool one. My mother and father-in-law live with us here. We have a pretty large house, so we're kind of spread out, and I don't move real fast with my disabilities that I now have. And so she has a hearing loss. So she's got some disability too, and it's kind of hard to communicate. She's not a texter or anything like that. I just really needed an easy way to say, hey, I need your attention. So we pretty much put a light bulb, a lamp in her room that I can control. And I can tell it to turn on in different colors. That Singlet light bulb LED has all the color spectrum. And so I'll tell it to turn on red, and I have a command saved, red on, and it means to her, oh, she sent me an email. I should go check my email. She doesn't watch it maybe as much as I do. If I turn it on blue, it means, hey, come find me. Unfortunately, we had the power go out in the middle of the night, and blue came on for her when the power came back on. It just came on. So she literally got up in the middle of the night and went downstairs to look and see if I needed her or something, but I didn't. I was asleep in bed. But it has worked really well and given us a communication channel we wouldn't have any other way. And then last thing to mention, I love using it for my shopping list. So I can just say her name, add this to my shopping list. And then when I'm ready to shop, even if it's online or whatever, I can just bring it up on my phone and the app and see everything. And that's opposed to, I got to remember to put that on the shopping list. When I'm making my shopping list, I need to remember this. And I never remember everything. But in the moment, kind of having these devices strategically placed around the house, I can just say things out loud wherever I am, and she tallies it for me on my shopping list. So that's the way I'm using it currently. And again, I started really small. I think the next step we might take is some outdoor cameras for the doorbell kind of concept. We'll see how that develops, but I'm really happy with what we're using it for now. And when I was really flat on my back and paralyzed, I could turn on lights and things, and that gave me a lot of comfort to be able to have her at my disposal. So
Yeah.
that's my pick of the week. And you may hear it at the end of the year as a pick of the year.
Yeah, I think I see your strategy there. Sneak that one in there so it can make your top 10 list or whatever.
Thinking ahead a little.
Very cool. Yeah. And home automation is a lot cheaper than it used to be. It used to be super expensive to buy these Philips Hue bulbs or whatever. And you're really committed now. It's fairly inexpensive, especially if you kind of do some good shopping. So good stuff. Yeah.
Black Friday's a good time to look.
Yeah. All right. My pick of the week. And I don't remember whether I picked this. If I did, it was a while back, and I have kind of reawakened my use of a way to capture things that I want to remember off, that are on the internet or in other places. And it's a product from Readwise, which I know I picked it in the past, but Readwise has created a Read It Later app called Reader. And Reader is actually very cool in that it can capture almost anything. It can capture YouTube videos. It can capture podcasts. It can capture web pages, PDFs. And the way it works, or the way they want you to use it, and I find this to be fairly intuitive, is it's a little browser extension. And so you're browsing and you come across something that you want to capture. You don't want to necessarily take the time to consume the content right then and there. You want maybe to be in a better place or a better state of mind to actually use the content. You click the button, it automatically goes into an inbox. And then at some point in the future, you can go into your inbox, and through very easy commands, you can either read through it, you can put it in a later list or an archive list, you can create notes, you can do highlighting. And all of the work that you do there gets translated into Readwise, and that's your kind of repository for all your notes, your highlights, your Kindle book highlights, those kinds of things. And it all gets back into there and then can go into your note-taking system depending on how you've got things set up. The other side of it has a feed reader. So we all remember the good old days when Google used to have a product called Reader, which was a way you could plug in RSS feeds. And then RSS feeds kind of fell out of favor. And now I think they're kind of back. You see RSS feeds quite a bit. And this allows you to plug RSS feeds into the feed portion of Reader. And then it brings the content from these RSS feeds into the system as well. And you can kind of treat them the same way as all the other stuff. You can either delete them, swipe them away, whatever. And you can do this on an iPad or your phone as well, because they've got nice apps for that. But they also allow you to, through keyboard commands, send this to your inbox or put it in the later folder, whatever. So it's kind of a nice blend. So the inbox can be more curated stuff that you found on the internet saying, hey, I want to read this later. But the feed side is kind of cool too, where it's bringing content that you didn't know existed through these RSS feeds about different topics. So Church Tech Today or our Ministry Tech Today, that I was from our ministry resources section, I have that as a feed. So it comes into my system and I will see the articles that come in without having to go to the site and physically pick it. And then I can kind of curate it and do what I want with it once it's in the system. Reader is currently free. I don't know if eventually they're going to charge for this. I think they might. But there are all kinds of other tools that I don't have time to go into, but it's a well done tool. I think it's much better than things like Pocket and those kinds of things. It's very full featured, and I think it's worth giving it a try. So give it a shot. But that's a Reader from Readwise. That's my pick of the week.
That's very
and that
nice.
May too make my top whatever in our upcoming list. So
a little end of year scramble
Tuck it in
happening
there.
here,
Yes,
just in
yes,
case y'all aren't paying attention.
Exactly. So
Very
all
good.
right. Let's move on to our community news and feedback segment.
Sure. And I wanted to make mention of a new Facebook group that's kind of started within the last 6 months or so. And it's on that buzz topic of artificial intelligence. This one's called Lutheran AI. And it was started by a couple of friends of ours, Philip Wells and Pastor James Aderman, and they're just kind of exploring the concept of artificial intelligence in the Christian church setting. So interestingly, Pastor Aderman just published or shared a link to a recently published Barna study that said Christians are wary of AI. And a quote says they especially would be disappointed to discover their churches using AI. Let that disappointment begin. AI is everywhere. The question for church leaders is, how do we help members realize AI is an enormous technological gift to disciple making? So he's included a link to that Barna study. And if you're interested, you can check that out over on their website as well. I'm not sure if it's easily accessible or how much of it they share, but definitely an overview is available there on the Barna site.
Yeah.
So
I'm interested to follow this group, and they're really going after it. There's a lot of content out there, and it's a fairly constant stream of content there on that group. So check if you're interested in that. I think from a pastor or teacher perspective, I think there's usefulness here. Join that conversation too.
That's going to do it for community needs and feedback for this week.
Awesome. Okay. And I think that's going to about do it for the show this week. Next time we gather, we will be our podcast team squared, because we will have Jason and Rachel joining us, our semi-regular classroom technology correspondents. And we are going to continue our conversation around the book, The AI Classroom. So can't get enough of that AI stuff, but this is really focused on education and educators and its place in the classroom. So we'll be looking at chapters 4 and 5 and some conversations around pedagogy. So feel free to tune back in for that. And we're so happy that you decided to join us this time. We don't underestimate the dedication or the time that you set aside for listening to little old us. Especially if you've been listening from the beginning, that's a significant investment in time. And we know most people don't. That. Yeah, we should. Right. Maybe AI can do that for you. I'm sure AI is coming to Power BI, or maybe it's already there.
Interesting.
We'll see. Lots of good stuff ahead. So we try and be relevant, and hopefully we are. And if you've got suggestions to make us more so for your particular ministry, let us know that too. But for now, we will see you next time. Have a blessed season of Thanksgiving preparations. I know that's a big thing on a lot of people's agenda these days. So to follow Sally's lead, maybe tell the A lady that you need to add something to the old shopping list. Add turkey to shopping list.
There you go.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining us. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.